That's just the basics. I know the shop's messy. Like I said, I stopped putting up tools about Thursday last week. There's parts here from a couple different diagnoses. There's little pieces of metalworking tools and metal drill bits from a frame I straightened, which I probably should have videoed, but I just don't. There's some things like that when you're cutting and welding, you need to stay in the moment, and video does not help me stay in the moment. I just needed to be able to feel what I was doing, and maybe I'm just not good enough to have that on that other way. But anyways, we got that. We got some upcoming stuff. We got the shop getting cleaned up. We got some upcoming stuff for I think we're going to try and get my kids ATC 70 running again after several tries last year. We've got a zero turn, an old Woods that's real similar to a Grasshopper getting run. We've got an Arctic Cat that's got a no start diagnosis that did run. We've got a Polaris that runs but has no power, and it's had a carb rebuild and a fuel pump and that kind of thing. Fresh air filter, just no power. It's like the timing just doesn't advance, or I don't know. And then we've still got the what is this, a TRX 286 Honda, which has no or intermittent spark, and it's already sold, and I bought it out of a scrap heap. So subscribe, please, and if you see any of the links for the affiliates marketing Amazon, feel free to jump on them. Anything you buy from Amazon, if you click on that link, costs you the same amount but could contribute back to me a little bit. And it's my Monday. I don't know when this video is going to hit because I don't remember what all I've got scheduled, but not a lot. And thanks for watching. This is a cat along with some tubing and one sheet of aluminum here. You got cage, rock sliders or tree kickers, front and rear bumpers, and one really nice machine in a very, very messy shop because I stopped putting up tools about Thursday last week. So zoom out a little bit. This thing's super sharp. So when this cage, you see it follows up, it's got that beautiful arch to it, all the geometry, all the triangulation through there. This cage is stout. It's the factory cage coming up here. It's tied into the full frame. Well, here's the deal, and you can check pretty easy. See how these doors got a little bit of play in them where they fit? Nothing ever fits perfect, especially on a side-by-side. It's just way too much plastic. I can go in and tune these in a little bit, tweak hinges, tweak mounting points. That's fine. First thing you're going to do when you build a cage, Joel, come in here with a tape measure and measure these gaps. Each gap, front and rear door. Those are going to be the easiest to look at, because the first thing that's going to happen when you've taken that cage off is this machine, which has constant tension on that cage, is going to go, it's going to take, not just a cigar, it's going to bend in the middle. It's going to drop. The very center of that, all the center weight of this machine is supported right here on this bar. When that bar is gone and this thing drops, the whole machine goes in just a little bit. Now, the way to fix that, aside from doing all your reference, measure all your gaps, write them down, take pictures. You have to pull battery on this, we know, so you can't rely. This machine has variable suspension, so it's a soft, firm, medium, whatever. It's got 3 settings. That's not going to do you any good at all, not even a little bit, because we can't depend on everything staying once we pull the battery, which is over here underneath this rear seat. what we can depend on, now that we don't have that, is jack stands and a flat piece of concrete. So you'll come over, and I like to use wooden isolators for this stuff. See these pretty plates that are underneath here? A jack stand's going to leave a mark on that. So you need to use some plates. Or I do. I'm going to use some plates. Just some wooden pieces, whatever it is, and I'm going to level this thing up all along the frame. Not here, not where the suspension catches it, on the frame. And it needs a minimum of 3 and probably 4 or 5 per side of good level pieces to keep this thing firm so it cannot drop. You can't just support the center, because the weight, when I'm crawling on it to install everything right here in the middle, that's going to change. When I'm crawling, the suspension will compress when I'm on top of it trying to finish a weld or something. So can't depend on that. I can't just jack up the front and back and leave the middle unsupported, because I'm removing a structural part. And that's going to drop. You have to have a minimum of 3 points of contact per side. Oh, look, the neighbor dogs are out again. I love them things. So yeah, a minimum of 3 points of contact per side. I know it's not a very wide machine. You could probably get away with using 5 points total, a centerpiece in the middle, and then pieces on the sides. Now what I don't want you to hear is use a floor jack for this. This has to be something solid. I'm sorry about the dogs. This has to be like screw jacks, wooden blocks. It has to be jack stands that are shimmed into place. This has to be solid. The weight of the machine has to be evenly distributed amongst these. And what you'll see is, if you were to leave a little gap in the center pieces and just jack up the front and rear, and then you left the center pieces there, guess what? It would sag down onto it. If you left 1/16 of an inch or an eighth, it might not do it initially. But as this thing sits overnight and the weight gets there and it starts being applied to every joint, especially as I'm crawling on it, and it's set there for a day or so, all them joints are going to try and bow just a little bit. Every bolt, every weld, every joint is going to transfer that torsional. It's going to have that tendency to bow. And when it bows, you'll notice it in the cage that you put on it, which is not designed for that. And you'll notice it in these door jambs. You'll notice that each one of these will be different. Not only will it be different as far as side to side, it's going to be different up and down. We know there's a little bit of adjustment and everything here, and just by its nature I'll probably have to adjust these. In fact, I'll probably adjust these just because I don't like how they look. However, we should never need to adjust them to make them shut just because we put a cage on it. We'll put the cage on it and then adjust for looks and performance, but it should still shut just as good as it did the day this guy bought it. Nothing personal against Kawasaki or Honda or Yamaha or anybody, but I have had a Honda in here, a 700 Pioneer, that rattled to beat the band because the door, they have a little screw out. These don't have it, but by the latches they have a little snubber that's down and it screws out, and they hadn't been properly adjusted. Nothing on it had. So when I serviced it, I fixed all the snubbers on it, and it was such a quieter, nicer feeling machine. because those vibrations transfer through the whole machine. But these things are assembled by human beings. The final assembly and all this, putting the doors on. A lot of these machines don't even have doors on them when they come to the dealership. Some of them do, some of them don't. Depends on who made it. But see that little pinch there? That looks like hell. If we drop that door, see how it's tight on the bottom? If we drop that door down a little bit and then kick the bottom up, this door jamb just a little bit up on the bottom compared to the top. So we want to drop it straight down and kick the bottom up. It will, since we've dropped it, so the whole thing will go down and then kick up a little bit. And that line there, see how this feature line here, body line, how it lines up, but it's wonky. This is of a different elevation than this. Boy, it's hard to see, isn't it? But when we drop that down, this line will drop like that, which is how this is supposed to fit. The other thing that you're going to do, now this one's made, it's going to have a roof. It's going to have the windshield, should fit, the factory windshield. Take out all your seats once you've got your initial measurements. So I'll go through and kind of tape and magnet and everything and make sure that myself, I'm similar height and build to the guy that owns this machine. It's definitely not mine. I want to make sure that his head's going to clear nice and easy. So you want to get in here, make sure you got headroom, make sure that nothing's going to be weird. So before I start tacking, I've already got this part, I've already got it jacked, everything's good, I've taken all my measurements. Once you've got that and everything's locked in and you've made your reference marks and all that, and where you're going to tack, where you're going to weld, pull these seats all the way out. Store them, I store them in my office. Anything that is easily gotten out, including the battery, never weld with the battery hooked up. The seat belts need to come out, roof, mirrors, all that. Any of this info stuff needs to be covered with a welding blanket or something of that nature. This probably needs to come out because it's pretty simple. I believe they just have a pin in the bottom. They may have a bolt now. I don't remember if they changed that. Anything that's soft rubber like that, it doesn't take hardly anything to create, and even these floorboards can be susceptible to it. Just a little drop of red hot metal on any of this, even the plastics up here. You're going to want to cover all this around this root here. See where this is going to come out? There's some plugs that need to be welded and an upright. So when that upright's here and I make my marks, this is all got to be covered if I intend to weld here. Now I'm going to try and just do a little tack on the outside, maybe 2 tacks. I'd like to do one and then one, not quite 180. You don't want, if you do 180, it can still wobble if it's got any play in it at all. But if you do a tack at like say 135, it might try and pull one direction, but it definitely can't go back and forth like that, and it can't do much for that. It really, if you could do 3 tacks equidistant at 60 degrees apart, not 60, 120 degrees apart, that would be ideal. But this situation just isn't going to allow it. And I'm going to preheat these bungs. I'll show you they are over here somewhere. Now, I can use one of these stopper end pieces here. This is heavy, it's solid steel. It's not hollow in any way, shape, or form. It's almost impossible to put this in here and get it to penetrate the same on those 2 pieces of metal. Now, why is that? This is much more dense. It's got much more mass per its area. So if I just drive this in, you just want to clean this up a little bit and it'll slide right in. I would melt more. I'd have more penetration back here than I would here. The weld would be taller here than it is here. But if I were to V this a little bit to match the chamfer on that, drive it in, and preheat this whole thing. So I'd clean it down to about here and preheat this assembly to where the whole thing is pretty hot enough you don't want to touch your hand to it, and then run a bead all the way around it. Doesn't have to be single pass, but it would look better if it was, because these are for bumpers and they're going to be seen. That would be ideal. These two both need to be, especially this. It's better that this is hotter than this is hotter than this. Because with less mass, this is going to act like it's hotter than this. In order to get equal penetration, you're going to preheat both sides. And I don't mean heat gun, I mean torch of some sort, whether it be propane or MAP or oxyacetylene. Hi, we're going to talk real quick about cage building tips. So if you've got a cage like I'm fixing to install on this Kawasaki, this is something you'll need to know. Now this is a pretty good looking kit, and we'll look at it in just a second, and we'll go through some of the simple stuff that I want to point out just as a prequel to building your own cage.